So let's cross to Birmingham then. Peter Cardwell, Talk presenter, covering the conferences for us this season. You've been to many of them, Peter. How's this one faring up?
Well, it's a strange one, actually, because you've got the fact that there are 4 contenders. The MPs will sort of whittle them down to 2 next week, but you've got the party members here listening to them, and just as we speak, Robert Jenrick is going on stage for a grilling at a Q&A. Perhaps you can hear the applause in the main hall. That's happening. He's been grilled, as is James Cleverly as well. So we'll see what people think, but so far people have been pretty positive. When you're at rock bottom and you have 4 people saying, you know, everything's going to be all right, we're going to make it fine for the Conservative Party, despite the fact they've had a real drubbing in the at the general election. Well, there is an air of positivity, I suppose, as that election leadership campaign continues.
In terms of what is happening, Tom Tugendhat warning against the Tories becoming Reform UK. Now, other of the fellow candidates have talked openly about chatting and having some kind of arrangement with Reform. Tugendhat ruling this one out.
Yes, that's right. I was there yesterday in the hall, actually, where he said, my job is to reform the Conservatives, not to become Reform. So certainly there are other candidates who'd be closer to Reform. The one who's probably closest, actually, Sheila Braverman, she didn't actually run. Priti Patel was knocked out in the first round. But clearly, with 4.1 million votes, Reform are a big force. They're a growing force. They had a huge and popular conference here in Birmingham, actually, about 10 days ago. They are going to be in the mind's eye of whoever becomes Conservative leader. But Tom Tugendhat, particularly, probably the most liberal of the 4, saying that he doesn't want any arrangement with them. There are, of course, something like 78 seats where Reform came second to Labour, actually. So Labour will be having a major look at Reform as well. It's not just former Conservatives who are for Reform, it's all sorts of people.
Yeah, indeed, and of course lots can happen in the next 5 years, and the mood music changes, public appetites change, and of course news stories change, and it will be interesting to see where Labour go, because that ultimately will depend on what happens to voters. But can the Tories regain ground? Because, you know, a lot of our callers, you know this, Peter, when you're presenting shows here on Talk, there is a sense that people could never go back. I mean, the damage is that bad that many people say, I just can't, I couldn't vote for them again.
Yes, I think that's certainly the sense that I get from a lot of people, but also people change their minds. There are new leaders, there are new policies that come out. Also, Labour is very unpopular. I'm sure you've seen that poll that says that Rishi Sunak's government actually more popular than Keir Starmer's administration. So that has come out from more in common.
I mean, that really does. That's really telling. I mean, that's a proper kick in the whatsits for Labour, isn't it, when you're less popular than Rishi Sunak's last government?
Well, indeed. Only 29% approval rating to Sunak's 31. A lot of people saying they don't like either of them, or choosing a different administration, or don't know. But certainly Starmer, for 12 and a half weeks that he has been Prime Minister, and it's been an absolute shocker in terms of what has happened. So the Conservatives would clearly think, there's a lot that can be done. But you talk about ground being made up. There is a heck of a lot of ground to be made up. There are only 121 MPs, let's remember, and opposing is a difficult thing. Getting your voice heard is a difficult thing, and that's the question for the delegates here at Conservative Party Conference. Which of these 4 candidates is the person who can oppose? They're all talking as if, oh, if I was Prime Minister, I'd do this, that or the other. Well, you're not, and for at least 4.5 years, probably, you're going to be Leader of the Opposition. So how are you going to oppose rather than to govern? I think that Labour are having a problem moving from opposition to government. They've been out of government for 14 years, and I also think the Conservatives are having a problem moving into opposition, adjusting their mindset into what opposition actually looks like.
One of the problems, of course, the Conservatives have got, and I suppose it was rather highlighted by James Cleverly criticising Rishi Sunak's Stop the Boats slogan. Now, not only is there lots of evidence of Mr. Cleverly himself shouting from the rafters about stopping the boats. We played a little compilation earlier on. Not only is there that, so we can see that he did, he joined in with all of this. It's then almost impossible, isn't it, to say, well, it was nothing to do with me, Guff. Cleverly was about as senior as it got in that government.
You're absolutely right, Ian. I mean, he was the Foreign Secretary, then he was the Home Secretary. He was the person whose job it was to stop the boats alongside Rishi Sunak, the Home Secretary in charge of the border force and the interior. And now he's trashing the policy that he was part of. We also have two former Home Office ministers, Robert Jenrick and Tom Tugendhat, criticising various aspects of Home Office policy as well, though Robert Jenrick, in fairness to him, resigned. Kemi Badenoch, all four of them were part of that previous administration. They can't just say it was all terrible, because they went along with it, and they're having much the same problem as Keir Starmer had when it comes to Jeremy Corbyn, because Keir Starmer, let's remember, was the shadow Brexit secretary in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet. So when you're part of the problem, what happened, or perhaps the solution, well, you've got to own it, and some people do, some people don't. It's very difficult in this kind of contest not to own it, especially as still the shadow Home Secretary James Cleverly.
Yeah, indeed. And a word, Peter, while you're with us, the Labour gift and freebie debacle doesn't go away. Every day we're finding out new things on this. We've had two-tier free gear Keir, and now we've got no pay Sue Gray, who apparently also trousered some football tickets as a little gift for her, which is that's another interesting angle, of course, because she's not an elected official. Does that make it worse? Does it make it more understandable?
I think a lot of people in the senior levels of government do get these kind of freebies. They do declare them, certainly in terms of the kind of charges that are against Keir Starmer, in terms of the freebies that he got Angela Rayner and not declaring things properly. A couple of tickets to Spurs, perhaps Spurs matches, perhaps not the biggest thing necessarily, but Sue Gray continues to be under pressure here. There are a lot of people briefing against her, including on her own team in Downing Street. So I don't think this is going to go away for any time. By the way, I don't know if you've seen Keir Starmer. I haven't seen Kemi Badenoch today actually at all, but Keir Starmer seems to have become the submarine Prime Minister. He doesn't seem to be anywhere at the moment, although he is heading on a foreign trip fairly soon as well. So I think a lot of people saying, where are you, Prime Minister, and are you going to ever give an interview to talk and tell us the things that we want the answer to, which we wanted to do at Labour conference last week. We're told it'll happen soon. Let's hope so.
Indeed. Peter, enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Always busy there over at the conferences. Peter Cardwell in Birmingham following the Tory ones. There's always that bit, isn't there? Do you remember when Boris went? Well, he didn't go missing. He was just in Downing Street or, doing something. But if you don't see a Prime Minister for a couple of days, it's like, where's he gone? What's he doing? Has he disappeared? Have they kidnapped him? Is he in the basement somewhere? Has he gone utterly gaga and they can't let him out in public any longer? The freebie stuff will continue, and it will continue for very good reason, because this was the government, the party, that was the very antithesis of the freebie. The freebie defined the Tory party in many respects, and particularly those at higher levels. Now, if you're an MP, it's very hard not to take a couple of tickets to your local team's football match. I kind of get that. And in fact, I don't... You've got to go all or nothing with this. I don't have a massive problem with a member of Parliament being invited to, I don't know, a restaurant in his constituency says, I'd like to invite you and your family for dinner, and it's on us. Now, that's a freebie, right? Right there. So I can see how it can happen in small kind of chunks, in incremental chunks. And it's probably mostly, a bit harmless. Probably, mostly a bit harmless. Doesn't really mean very much. But the whole reason this story isn't going away, I hear people on the left say, oh, it's the right-wing press, won't let it go. I didn't give Boris Johnson a hard time over this. Well, we certainly did. I gave Boris Johnson 2 barrels when it came to wallpaper, because I wanted to know who was donating money to my Prime Minister to do up his gaff. I thought it was a reasonable question. And he wasn't forthcoming, and that was another layer of distrust. It took ages to get the answers, etc. And that's just the wallpaper. There were other... But you know what? Boris, I don't think, ever disputed the fact that he would trouser a freebie. It's not a brown envelope in the conventional sense, but I think you sort of need to know, what does somebody want in return if they're going to offer you a few quid in your direction? But I think with Labour, it's as much about the actual money. If somebody is... Look, Lord Ali is a Labour Party member. He wants to support his party. I get that. But isn't there a line where that you draw in the sand on this one, and I hope sensibly argue the difference between, you know, paying to help somebody's election campaign, printing some leaflets, supplying some transport, etc., and spending tens of thousands of pounds on designer clothes. It's not illegal. It was all declared. That isn't the argument. The argument is that these were the people that didn't do that. They really didn't do that. The Tories did that. We don't do that. And it turns out there's a multi-millionaire who was throwing money left, right and centre at campaigns and clothes and the use of homes. You got Angela Rayner, who can hardly string a sentence together, having it off royally over there in Manhattan in a nice flat, penthouses being... And all of that is... In any other day, I wouldn't give a hoot about this, but I give a hoot because these people got elected on the basis, partly on the basis, that this isn't their thing. They don't do this. The Tories do. We don't do this stuff. You know, big donation from a hedge fund player. I mean, really? You do that? You told us you didn't do that. That's the story, for context.